Happy day. My name is Ashley. I'm your host for the show. I'm just going to jump right into it because I'm excited and I have been warming up, let's just say. But first, literally, I warmed up and got myself a sip of coffee. So, sip of coffee. So, in this episode of, let's just say, my talk show, because I think that's hilarious, it makes sense. I would have a talk show. So, and it would make sense that I would want to talk about really controversial things like good versus bad, the human experience. I want to talk about feelings, sexuality, money, all of the things that feel a little bit taboo. And in a way, the things that we hold a little bit closer to our chest, like shame. So my teacher says something along the lines of like, if you don't name it, the shame, something in that realm. So I want to, I'll go first. I'll be the vulnerable one. I'll say the things that have formed my life, formed my opinion, helped me see and mold my perspective in the world. And that is really my intention here. So jumping right in, I'm hoping maybe that you perhaps watched my first episode or listened to it and know kind of who I am, what I'm about. So I'm just going to get right into it. Good versus bad. Fourth way is my favorite system to study. And the way that it's sort of taught me to look at this big concept is very objectively. So simplifying it, when you're making each particular actions, that's what's good versus bad. So an action would be if I need to go south when I'm where I'm at, and I literally leave and start driving north, that we can all say that that is bad. That's how you objectively decide bad. If your aim is somewhere else and you go against it, that would be your sort of baseline figuring out good versus bad. For me, where it gets really colorful and really challenging is a lot of us haven't really questioned if the beliefs that we have are our own or if they're given to us. So that when we're making life choices, as we grow up, we are not necessarily asking ourselves, is it from the lens of our own fresh view, our own verified perspective, or is it one that was just given to me and I'm sort of just in repetition and mimicking the way that somebody told me something was? My other favorite way to look at this is if somebody constantly told you growing up that pizza was like disgusting, and then you're like, yeah, fuck pizza. Actually, like anybody who likes pizza is like, ew, bad, gross, what a weirdo. And then you actually have pizza one time and you're like, fucking life changing. And then you kind of find out that that person had frozen pizza and only decided off of that entire objective decision if they liked pizza at all was based off of frozen pizza. You know, when you start to realize these ways that other people's opinions are just their opinions, and if you're not asking questions and being curious, then how can you decide if something is, quote, good or bad? Another really fun analogy is when a grandmother, her daughter, and the granddaughter are all in the kitchen cooking one year, and the granddaughter brings the ham out and she cuts the ends of it off and puts it into the pan. And the grandma's like, what are you doing? And the mom cuts in and goes, well, that's how you taught me how to do it. And the grandma says simply, my pan wasn't big enough. Your pan's fine. I was only cutting the edges off to fit my pan. So what ways have other people's experiences formed and shaped their opinion that they're going to come back and tell you exactly how you should live your life or what you should consider good or what you should consider bad based off of their life experience? And in a way, what was really motivating or easy for me to talk about this conversation today was because in majority of my life has been not bad, right? Just different. I just live a little differently. I've made choices when I was younger that were to a lot of people bad. Like I was really breaking the good girl mold. And even in that, that's such a creative way to go down the rabbit hole of like, are you being a good girl? Well, to clarify that really quickly, if your aim is to be a good girl, then like when you're being a good girl, when you're meeting all the people pleasing expectations of every single person, and your true aim is just to be a good girl and you're satisfied because everybody else thinks you're a good girl, then like being a good girl is fine. But if you're continuing to do things like what I'm trying to get into, when you're continuing to live a life that is good in the sense of what society has sold us. And again, also, if like you are society and you're like rock on, like not in a bad way, but like this might not be the space for you. But if you're in the place where you're questioning what society has given us as a template to live off of, then like this gets deep, where you can ask yourself a lot of questions, not just am I good or am I bad, but giving yourself the perspective of what does good mean for me and what does bad mean for me. And so the best, simplest way is, am I living in my values? So, it's something that you even question, like what are the values that you have in your life? What gets me to the excitement of talking about this today is like when I'm constantly reevaluating my values and making sure I'm living my life in accordance to them. And then when I'm not, like I wouldn't say I'm living a bad life. I would just say I'm not living the life that aligns with my values. Especially if I find myself, which I have before, being like, you know what, I'm a trailblazer. I'm out here to do life, very exploratory. I'm here to make mistakes. It's all good. It's exciting. It's an adventure. And then when I catch myself being like, actually, I need to be safe and have a 401k and maybe get a job and do all the things that like everybody says society is like valuing. And then I get into that realm and I'm like, ah, fuck, that's not for me. Like, it's not that it's bad. It's just like, it doesn't feel right for me. It's going in a different direction as my aim. So you find your values, you get them together, and then you realize like, okay, how does this how does my life fit into these values? And like, if you find yourself not living any of your values that you say you have, like that's such a great experiment, to just toggle off a little bit when you find that your values are, and you would say your priorities are your family and your health. I'm not here to judge. It's just that if your priority was your family, you would probably spend less time on your phone and more time engaging with your family. And if health was your primary focus or value, maybe when you say you've been to the gym and you haven't been there for like 6 days, 6 weeks, you're consistently eating poorly, you're drinking alcohol, like whatever the case may be, is, would you actually say that that is living in your values? So giving yourself sort of like a truth of like, oh shit, like what is good and what is bad is it's actually like, and you swing it all the way around. What's kind of like not good about it is that you're lying to yourself. To say that like you have this thing as your value, but you're not living it, like just to be a liar to yourself, I would say just like in general isn't good. We try to live up to and reach other people's expectations of what they've defined as good without reaching for clarity on one, what your values are and what are their values, right? So like maybe these other people who have values or what they think is good and what I think is bad, maybe they have obviously a different set of values. A good example that I've heard in other ways is a lot of other religions and countries have different cultural ways of doing things. And that's how they value order. And I would never, my value system, my morals would never allow me. But the thing that my teacher teaches is that in a way, it's more about honor, not so much morals. Like, I don't care to necessarily do what you think is right. I care to honor my own self-authority and do what I think is right. So what also begins to be a bigger question is it good and or bad, or how do you see it the way that you don't have any self-authority in your life? Like there's no participation. When are you engaging and taking the wheel and saying, this is what I'm going to do? And so the inability to gain control of your life for whatever circumstances it is, not necessarily whatever circumstances, right? Because like I'm only speaking a lot to my experience and a lot of the people that have shared with me theirs. Obviously we have obstacles that are, limitless. So what I mean by that is when you kind of lost my train of thought there, when you when you can see more than one option. Okay, where was I there? Back to good and bad. Oh, okay, that's it. If you have the ability to change the things in your personality or your character or behavior that you see are the obstruction of getting you to reach your goals, reach your aim, being good, but you don't have any ability to change those things inside of you, imagine that that's not really good. We would say that a runaway train would not be good. And in the way that we are a being, and fourth way uses the very hard to swallow, but very accurate and objective, that we're a machine. We are asleep at the wheel. We didn't get a user's manual for who we are and how we work. We are very distracted by learning about other things instead of learning about ourselves. And therefore, we have this machine with like a lot of available, and so I guess it's not available, but a lot of endless and limitless talent, skills, gifts, whatever it may be. And we just don't know how to use it at all. We don't know how to access these things. The sensations that we get from even accessing something new is uncomfortable. So when you have this disconnect from yourself and you are just like really only reacting to life, not even responding to it, but you're just reacting to like whatever happens to you. Like nothing can be good or bad. You're not in control. You don't get to decide, actually. You're a machine. You're doing the programming that you were given. You're in a loop, you're competitively repeating something. And if that is like, if you're not going to pay attention to yourself, then like, it's not good or bad. You're asleep at the wheel. Like it is what it is. And again, like you probably wouldn't be in my space. I'm all about like waking the senses up to what's going on around us. Like this idea of good or bad doesn't have any merits when somebody's completely asleep. Really they get grace, like, oh, they're not even really participating in their life. So how could they know if they did something good or bad? Like that's really what fourth way comes down to too. Like, can you suffer the idea that you don't make any decisions in your life? You don't make anything happen in your life. You can't do anything. Everything happens to you. You'd like to lose 10 pounds. You find yourself eating full ice cream at night. Can't stay focused on one thing. And I would say that alone, just in and with itself, is bad. And it's only bad because in my main aim in life would be to find unity and harmony. And I don't necessarily think that there's an ability to have unity and harmony when there's just no order, full chaos. Something else is always running us from the outside. And this is, first of all, this is not to just for myself, right? I catch myself even being so convicted, thinking that what I just said, I have to have 100% in a line. No, I don't. I don't at all, actually. I don't have that shit under control. A lot of times I still do get carried away and I don't have always the grip on the handle right away. Sometimes I have to reel myself back in and be like, oh shit, okay. Got carried away there. Got kind of like lost in the hypnosis of the world and being like, forgetting what was important to me and really trying to live my life for somebody else. Like nobody's literally like there. I live alone. Nobody's doing life for me. I'm doing it all by myself. And is that good or bad? It's just the other kind of thing that's fun too to think about is how you act when things are bad, just for that sake, right? How do you perceive something that's challenging is really the definition of what is the challenge. Like some people like myself find I grow competence and confidence in challenging situations. And in my life, I think I've leaned on them a lot to be like, oh, push myself. Who am I? Like, what is this? And it's not that that was bad. It's just that even in the sake of like, I've grown. So the way that I want to find myself is just a little different. It doesn't have to be so dramatic. I don't have to like be so experiential. So now I'm kind of like, cool, I want to learn about myself in different ways, being more grounded or in other ways that, let's say about this. If I can reevaluate what my aim and my values are for my life, then what I think is good and what I think is bad for that, for the sake of this conversation, is gonna vary. Yeah, like I'm a very much a fan of watching some trash TV. Love is Blind, and I just now started watching The Bachelor. But I'm not really like very impressed with the things that are on TV right now. Thank God, actually, because as I'm transitioning into this space and energy and creation, I really don't think that it's valuable for me to be watching TV more than just like, you know, it's okay to keep up with a couple of shows in my world right now, right? I just the turning constantly to something to distract me or even social media unless I'm using it. I can't let it use me anymore. These sort of things I'm now seeing as not good or bad, but like, if I'm going to find myself being sucked into a TV show and on my phone, is that helping me reach my goals? No, a lot of my goals are surrounded by like, can I express myself right now, find relief? Like, how can I share the curiosity inside of me and not necessarily find others, but just honor and not disown that this is my life experience. I'm a 6'2" generator. I am an emotional authority. I love studying gene keys and all of the Enneagram. The way that I study it is far beyond the personalities, but in Enneagram, I'm a 7. I'm very excited. I'm very mystical. I turn very hermit. I tend to feel a bit like I'm single. I'm an aunt. A lot of people around me are in relationships and have family. I am just really alone, and a lot of the experiences I have in my life. And I don't think that it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. There's a lot of other people that are out there similar to me, that when I found my teacher, Mami Onami, I was like, wow, there's somebody out that thinks like me. And I don't have to feel so uh, pressed to have these intellectual conversations with people who aren't really like into them. I politely tell my friends and family that like while I'm starting something new, like a podcast and a YouTube channel, I don't expect them to get on and watch it. Maybe like go to like give me a view or click to like it or something, but this is shit you've already been hearing and you probably didn't even really want to. The unsolicited like dumping of information had to eventually lead to a channel of information to does anybody else think that this stuff is cool? Does anybody else want to think about good and bad and how it plays out in our life and how we are really truly limiting ourselves just around the thinking that something is good and bad? And when and how it was sort of planted into your mind and why and how you've never really questioned if it's even yours. And so I think that that's a really fun and interesting way to be like, who's my people? Who else out there is wanting to think about this? Who else is being like, all right, I'm a single woman. Let's just say that ideally imagining, not ideally, but like they say, like, what's your ideal audience? And I'm imagining in my audience, you're probably like an auntie, you're in your 30s, you are an artist of some way. I'm a hairstylist, so this might find its way to a lot of hairstylists. There's a lot of adventure and trial and error. There's bravery and courage and vulnerability and the sort of connectedness with nature that you have, that maybe you're getting your hands dirty in the garden and or creating, but you're also just kind of like, I don't really have this is something I hear a lot behind the chair and when I meet other people in person and they're like, where do you find other people that want to have this discussion with you? And I'm so lucky that I have a lot of friends and people in my life that want to have these discussions with me. As far as friends go, not so much my family and not like so much like in person, but like my scattered world is is of the esoteric arts and learning about yourself and introspection and supporting and loving one another and those type of things. But you're in this space of like, I question everything. Like the skepticism is runs deep with me. I want to know that I'm engaging in the exciting, great mystery. And I'm not going to get any answers, but I'm also definitely not going to get any answers if I continue to limit myself in a box by labeling things good and bad. That is just really, that really works for me. And I think what another interesting way to sip of coffee to understand the importance of good and bad. Okay. And that's not the right book. The Enneagram presented through the fourth way system has a triangle in the center, a hexagram, and a circle. The triangle under any circumstances of spiritual laws is the law of three. The top being neutral, one side being passive, one side being active. The triangle being completely equal, nothing necessarily being good or bad. So passive and active are not good and bad and neutral. They're all equal, but they all need to be there. And you need to be able to come out and see that they're all there. So this idea of painting this idea of painting a question in your mind of what is good versus bad, how quickly do I label something, or how do I live my life and all my behaviors around this concept is to paint a picture of a new perspective. Course in Miracles says that a perspective change is a miracle. You see things differently. And so I do think that good versus bad is a really hard one to come into, but I think that it's really valuable and worthwhile because you could really run that through the gambit, you know? I'll give you a couple of examples. If you're saving yourself for marriage because your family is of the religious belief that you have to, and that every time that you abstain from sex, regardless of any personal beliefs and urges that you're stirring around and you're finding up, but you continue to stay the path, that's good for them. And that's good if your whole entire life purpose is to satisfy the needs of others. However, if you're also saying that what's important to you is the idea of like our bodies are incredibly sensational and like literally we're made for certain things, and you might be of that mindset where you're like, this is completely natural. And like when it's like loving and respecting, you could be on both spectrums of that. When you already used the pizza and everything, but when you're living a life that you are not questioning if it's good for you or not, I am curious about that actually. And here's where I'm not trying to necessarily persuade people, but just kind of trying to like, I don't know, live up to my name. Lots of people have said that I am a change tornado, I'm disruptive, and I actually am totally okay with that. So I'm here to disrupt and ask you to question the very beliefs that you hold about yourself and about the world, and asking yourself, do these big beliefs that I hold and how the way that they form my entire personality, like, are they even mine? Like, do I tend to see other people doing things that I wish I could do and say that they're bad because they're doing it? And, like, that's like your first cue that like your good versus bad is probably like a little bit broken. You tend to shame the person for something that maybe you'd want to do. And I think that we've done that. I've done that in so many various ways that are definitely for other topics. I just hope that in this process of sharing for myself, and while I understand that A Course in Miracles says that you can't you can't have something for your own unless you give it away. And a teacher is anybody who wants to teach. And the way that I see this is I have this information inside of me and it helps me learn when I share it. Does it help other people hear these outrageous beliefs and thoughts? Somebody has said to me once before that like I tend to kind of like plant ideas, and I would like to think more I'm a thought leader, but like I really don't mind the aspect of I plant a seed of a thought And then it's meant for you to be curious and go research it yourself. I'm never trying to get anybody to just blindly accept what I'm saying. It's okay to disagree with me. I encourage you to disagree with me and find out for yourself what feels like truth. As long as you understand where like truth does kind of begin and end right there. What is good and bad? Do you even have your own? How could it be true if you're saying this thing is bad, but really you find out later it's good, right? So it's meant to engage your curiosity. It's not meant for you to understand every single thing that I say. It is supposed to be encouraging. It is supposed to be feeding the other intellects and curious creatures like myself who are like, what? I've never even heard of the Enneagram. I've never questioned if something was good or bad. Like, do I trust myself? Like, what are the ways that are things that are holding me back? Because I've never had the ability to look at them and be curious about what does this mean in my life? So I feel like that's a good place to end today. Thanks for being here. If you found your way here, I'm so blessed. I'm so thankful. I am doing this out of sort of this force coming up inside of me for myself, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that I would really hope that these words fall on somebody like myself, where I was years and years ago curious about many things. And this isn't something that I think is missing in the world. It's just something I think that I should be bringing to the world. So if you found me, I'm so grateful. Thank you. Have a great day.